In this edition of Art Rocks, a woodworker creates museum-quality scale models.
It's a lot of fun. It's therapy to me.
Second chances arise through poetry.
I'd say the biggest thing that people can learn about the folks that are in here that I've learned is that it's not bad people, it's bad decisions.
We learn how a sculptor fell into claymation.
I feel like art picked me.
And light and sound converge into art.
I'm interested in what I don't know and what can be discovered in the process of creating something with light.
It's all ahead on this edition of Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, I'm James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine, and this is Art Rocks. We begin our show today with the story of a Cajun woodworker whose appreciation for architecture has led him to craft replicas of his favorite historic structures. These miniatures of landmark Louisiana buildings, from churches to plantation homes and even simple Cajun cabins, have the power to motivate others. Let's take a look.
It started with a birdhouse, modeled after a rustic Cajun cabin. John Allen LeBlanc found that people liked them, so he built more, taking on more challenging designs, and in the process, finding a hobby that he clearly loves.
When I start one of these replicas, I'm really into it. It feels like I am 3 inches high. I have the feeling of it. I go back in time. It's a lot of fun. It's therapy to me.
Since 1996, LeBlanc has perfected his craft, choosing subjects that are meaningful landmarks or buildings that have historic significance.
He's done 24 replicas. They are museum quality pieces now, keeping the Acadian people houses, churches, and buildings. This is his passion. He wants the children, the grandchildren, future people to understand what was here before, because John fears, as any old building standing, they tear them down and put a parking lot.
A spouse whose interests complement her husband's is another part of this legacy.
I do the research for him on the internet. I do genealogy, that we try to tie it in with these buildings and these churches. And John builds them. And my other contribution, I guess the biggest contribution, is finding a place for them, to get them out for the people to see.
My scale is every half inch on the replica is a foot on the building. I go there and measure it, take pictures, and I also get on the table and I draft it to size. I take all my kinks out of right there on paper, and it becomes my blueprint. So I wanted to build one of those big plantation homes, and I chose oak lawn.
The largest of his replicas so far, Oak Lawn was created during Governor Mike Foster's term in office.
And today, it's in the old state capitol, in the Foster Room. I have St. Charles in Grand Coteau. It took about 1,200 hours for that church. It ended up to be 6 feet long and 4 feet high. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that one very much, because there's a lot of woodwork, moldings and weatherboards. It's one of my prettiest I've ever done. And today it's in New Orleans at the Ogden Museum. And Ogden is affiliated with Smithsonian. And I love that.
It has brought us all over the world, meeting people via internet, or people knocking on our doors, or phone calls or mail, wanting to visit with us, see his pieces. These are not sold. We have never sold one. We have donated them all. He built a home for the Guilbeault family, the Thibodeau family, and the LeBlanc family, and he donated to each of these families, and they all raffled them off to make money for their associations.
The generosity and enthusiasm of the LeBlancs has led to fundraisers for schools and museums, too.
John built 2 replicas of St. Charles de Mine, and one of them we took up to Canada, and they had a presentation for it. Did the whole 9-bit with the people up there, and they had done a video for across Canada, BBC across Canada.
That video, featuring LeBlanc's replica, prompted calls to the Canadian Prime Minister, who made a point of visiting the Grand Pré National Historic Site. The curator of the site and supporters took the opportunity to meet with the Prime Minister and ask for funds to create a center at the site, funds that had been denied many times before. This time, their request met a different response.
They got a $5 million building set up on their property now, and it was open in 2004 for the Congrès Mondial reunions, so we got to see it in 2004. And that was John's efforts at building this little wooden box church. And this is one of the most important things I think John has done, his efforts for building this little church, for them to get their monies, because Grand Pré is like a mecca for Acadian people.
LeBlanc continues to look for new subjects. Shadows on the Teche, the state's only property in the National Trust for Historic Preservation, is high on that list.
I would love to do St. Genevieve in Lafayette, because that's my church. I might have 24 I would love to do, but I better hurry.
In all of the replicas, a symbolic item is placed in the interior, such as wood from the Evangeline oak, taken from fallen branches, of course. Now, let's take a look at some of the upcoming arts events happening across Louisiana. For more information on these events, visit our website at lpb.org/artrocks. And to find more arts activities, check out countryroadsmag.com. Next, we meet a young poet working with those who hope to get their lives back on track. By supplying his students with the tools to write, Carlos Contreras is having a real impact.
Need something to write with? Try one of those doesn't work, so try and give me back the one that doesn't work. Write about whatever you like. It doesn't have to be a poem. Whatever's on your heart, whatever's on your mind.
Well, this man the other day told me that he could not understand the world that I'm from. And it made me admit that I could never understand his either. I sit in this classroom on Wednesdays in the evening, and there's this dude who's trying to understand the world of orange jumpsuits and criminal histories. His heart is like a golden microphone trying to hold a conversation with a broke speaker. It's somehow they communicate.
This program that we run out here, we tout it as a self-reflective process, as a journey of looking at oneself and the decisions we make and the choices we make in life and what we're going to do in our future and otherwise what we're doing in the present. Man, it's modeled partly in that way because that's simply what I do with writing. It's the way I figure myself out. I continually discover things about myself on an emotional level, and writing is the easiest way to do that for me.
Now, as I look back and remember the past, riddled with painful memories of childhood laughs, just an act to overcome what was done in an attempt to play dumb, while at the same time trying to suppress the memories and screams that insisted on waking me from my childhood dreams.
To be true to the art form, or as true, in my opinion, as true to the art form as possible, you have to realize that it's not about you. I write primarily about myself, and although that might sound weird sometimes, I write about understanding myself, and that makes me pretty vulnerable on stage most of the time. But the reaction to some of those pieces have been comfort on behalf of audience members that have heard them, and that has made me realize that it's not about me. It's totally about the experience of somebody else hearing what I have to say, not because they need to listen to me, but because hearing what I have to say might help them figure out something about themselves.
But life's tricky, so it came fast like a freight train. Once a young boy, now a young man. I was living bad words, no censorship. I had a good life, but it slipped right through my fingertips. I thought life was a game and I played myself with both hands. I'm ambidextrous. I know my light's not bright right now, but in time it will shine because it's mine.
I would say the biggest thing that people can learn about the folks that are in here that I've learned is that it's not bad people. It's bad decisions. I've learned that people give up on themselves when you give up on them. And our program aims to not give up on anybody. Holding people's ability to learn is dangerous. To put people back out on the street without any increased intellectual capacity, any increased capacity for being compassionate and caring, any capacity that doesn't allow them to be self-reflective, taking somebody in and turning them back out on the street, either in the same situation they were or in a diminished situation because you gave them no service while they were locked up, that's more dangerous to me. Our participants in Just Right come from, not all of them, but a lot of them come from backgrounds of drug-addicted parents. A lot of them come from split families. A lot of them come from being homeless. That's a lot of solitary time, and then they end up in places where you spend even more solitary time. My point being, they very rarely get to speak to anybody that wants to listen.
Start CPR because I don't feel the heartbeat. It's just another addict that fell off his feet.
It's not a question of if, it's just how are people going to change? Are we going to help them to change themselves for the better? Are we going to help them to continue to make the wrong choices and change for the worse?
Because it's funny how things could change for the better. And the good Lord sent me here just like a letter. And just like that, it all went away. Like a dream I had to wake up the next day. I'm free from that life, can't you see? Because once again, God saved me.
12 years ago when I started doing poetry, I'm from 2 older brothers and a dad who was a Marine, and so poetry, being a poet, wasn't like the most attractive thing, or it was kind of something to make fun of for a real long time, you know, until they went to an event, until my dad heard the first poem I wrote about him, and then they realized that there was something within that art form that although they didn't practice it, they could begin to appreciate, they could realize what it took. Engaging with an audience or with a group of people, for me, comes primarily out of being honest. You know, in my writing, it's simply who I am and what I do, and there are no punches pulled, and there's genuine honesty delivered.
I need to focus on the better days, but the crimes they committed be depending on the weather change, and people steady asking for it, but can they really weather change? I'm just giving my 2 cents, because the dude I knew back in the day that moved bricks underneath the overpass asking for 2 cents.
I care because somebody has to. I care because I met a partner on this project that has a heart just as big as mine. I care because I realize that the facility cares. I care because we're allowed to care, and until they take that ability away from us, then it's our responsibility to do so. There are 3,000 people in this place. If nobody cares about them, then what are we doing for our own community? Do I understand them at all times? No. Do I relate to their background and their experiences all the time? No. Can I care about them even though I don't have that level of understanding? Absolutely.
I strive for perfection. It was born into me, branded, expected to be a better version of self with the setting of each sun. Each sun a different rendition of the same song. My melody, discordant though it may be, sings, because I do anything to be able to. But instead, I write. But these instances are never the final draft. Edit in progress. I am a practitioner of process. Poetry bent into the frame of this ink scroll must have something, sometimes finding nothing at the end of me. New beginnings offer to each day with the rising of the sun. And I don't mind the sweat, grind, hustle, humble, respectful, respectable. I respect boundaries even when ignoring or breaking them. Aware that they are there, often push beyond the comfortable to find the memorable. Remember me for being the weird kid, loud ones, squeaky wheel, loose screw, dollar shop, but never a minute too late. In fact, sometimes too soon for what's about to come. Coming out of my shell, I figured out these wings need no cocoon. Monarch mounting metaphors, I'm still flying. I write like that's all there is to life, and sometimes it is. But I'm finding space to be comfortable with that I cannot control, which can commonly be deduced to my own thoughts, emotions, and fingertips, mouth, feet, and lips. I'm a mess. Mass mayhem with ink and a story to tell. Remember me for being confusing, confident, coincidentally always there when you need me, but confused as to what I should be doing. Things are getting done in means and matters of importance. I will remember myself not as important, but better yet, insignificantly different than you. Because we make better music when making moments with our conversations. Life is a foreign language, and our interactions are simply the translations. I am forked tongue, never forgotten I hum, sick of the sound of my own voice. If only I could sing, I'd Billie Holiday my way away from here. Coltrane, catch the next one out of town, onto something not so blue, less gray, all needle and no fix. I'd scratch whatever's beneath the surface and remix, mix my mouth back into something that made sense. If only I could sing.
Up next, let's stop by animator Seth Mittag's Texas home, where many of his claymation fantasies take shape. The artist's fascination with cartoons dates back to his childhood, but Mittag's career as an animator was pure happenstance.
Yeah, Connor the Barbarian.
Thanks, Dad, right? Yeah,
Oh,
sweet.
rockin'.
As a kid, I studied cartoons, of course, like every kid. My brothers and I, we would copy drawing cartoons. We would drive my mother crazy by speaking in cartoon voice all day long.
Go ahead, rub my face in it.
You know, I had this like background and knowing a lot about cartoons and things, so. My wife was at a party in New York, and she was hanging out with some producers and things like that. And I had at home been making these little claymation cartoons. And she found out that one of the producer guys owned an animation studio, and she told them that I was an animator, which in the business means like you have an agent and you get like lots of money, when in reality I'd just been making these little cartoons. And he was like, great, we're shooting this thing, I need some more animators, can you have them come down? And so I ran down to the studio to do the animation test, and I was like, well, I don't really do this, but I'm a sculptor. And so they stuck me in the sculpting department, and that's how I got started. I've worked on commercials for Howard Johnson, Progressive Soup, did something really cool for the Globetrotters, which was really great, and a television show on Nickelodeon. I worked on the pilot. I make animations. I also make the things in and around animation. So I'm really interested in this idea for gallery or fine art shows to have the feeling of an animation studio. So I usually show sets and characters and short spots of animation. And to me, it relates to the time that I spent working in an animation studio.
Good afternoon. The worst is apparently over for the area around Brownsville as Hurricane Allen makes its way farther inland.
The Hurricane Project started when I found this film footage of 1980 Hurricane Allen on YouTube. I took the audio from it and then reanimated the newscast. And part of the story talks about this tornado that hits a trailer home. And so I decided, well, I needed to build this trailer home. So the trailer home's in a tree, and then we have the animation. And so it builds kind of a whole story around that event. Eventually in the story, the family decides to continue to live in the trailer home after it's in the tree. And so they become this sort of redneck Swiss Family Robinson thing. So anyway, it's just kind of my own little funny take on it.
We ran into the bathroom, and then it snowed just like that.
I feel like art picked me. I've always made things. My family, we all make things, and it's just it's something I always do. So I can't really imagine not making things or making art.
Two can play this game.
For more, visit SethMittag.com. Now it's time to examine another of Louisiana's treasures, an artistic or cultural element with a unique connection to Louisiana. This week, we focus on an unforgettable fictional character, Ignatius J Reilly.
One of New Orleans' most famous fictional characters, Ignatius J. Reilly is the protagonist of the satirical novel A Confederacy of Dunces, authored by John Kennedy Toole. A life-sized bronze statue of the slovenly Ignatius in his ever-present cap with distinctive ear flaps was sculpted by William Ludwig and erected in 2002. It stands in the 800 block of Canal Street, under the clock outside of the former D.H. Holmes department store, the setting where the novel begins. The model for the statue is award-winning actor John Spud McConnell, who has portrayed the character of Ignatius on stage. The bronze statue is stored for safekeeping during Mardi Gras, but is a much-visited literary landmark the rest of the year. A Confederacy of Dunces is set in 1960s New Orleans. Ignatius is the ultimate anti-hero, an obese mama's boy who still lives at home. He's taken by frequent attacks of flatulence and is utterly contemptuous of modernity. Like a modern-day Don Quixote, he envisions himself on a crusade against ignorance and perversity. His unfounded arrogance is one of the qualities that make Ignatius such an unforgettable comic character. A Confederacy of Dunces was published in 1980 by the LSU Press, 11 years after the author, John Kennedy Toole, took his own life at the age of 31. Toole's mother, Mrs. Thelma Toole, and writer Walker Percy are credited with bringing the book to publication. It was awarded the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction in 1981. In the last 35 years, the book has been translated into 27 languages and has sold more than 3.5 million copies.
In our final segment, we meet up with artist Dorothy Tanner at her Denver studio. Since the 1960s, Tanner has been crafting breathtaking sculptures using light. We take a look at her light and sound creations for one mesmerizing multi-sensory experience.
Light defines reality. Light defines who you are, what you look like.
Dorothy Tanner began harnessing light to create her art in the 1960s. While the shimmering quality the light has on the work is visually captivating, Tanner explained she wants her work to engage more than the eye. She uses art, in her words, to control the tyranny of a logical mind.
There was a certain dissatisfaction with living the usual artist's life, which is to produce work and then run around and get yourself recognized and go through the whole business of it. It was not what art meant to me. I wanted it to be more than that. I'm not interested in one sense in what I know. I'm interested in what I don't know, in what can be discovered in the process of creating something with light, and to discover what it is that I'm really thinking or what I'm really feeling. I very often will start with a piece of material that's left over from another sculpture. You need to play with the material and to play with light and to discover it. That interests me. I followed through with the drawing, which is much less satisfying to me.
Tanner explained she soon discovered something that is satisfying to her and critical to her continued evolution as an artist.
We began to do performances with overhead projectors. We created sculptures with light. We bring in musicians. Music has the ability, sound has the ability, as does light, to transport you to other realms. When you put people into a comfortable state and you address them sensually through their audio facilities, through their vision, without intellectualizing, you free them from their usual inner dialogue. It elevates them. I am doing it to get them to feel good, to get them to take a vacation from themselves. People come back and they tell me they have never seen anything like it. They're very transported by having been here. It's very gratifying to me to have people so delighted, so appreciative. Art should do whatever the artist feels is true and honest to himself. I'm kind of demanding in that respect, that it be a reflection of where I am, who I am.
That wraps it up for this edition of Art Rocks. Remember, we are always available online at lpb.org/artrocks, where you can catch up on any episodes you've missed and find information on upcoming arts events throughout the state. Until next time, I'm James Fox Smith, and thanks for watching.